We are recording.
Thanks, Tucker. Hello, everyone, and Happy New Year. Welcome to a whole new year, calendar year anyway. We're excited about what we've got to do this year. We've got a lot of work to do between now and the end of March or middle of March when we send our budget over to the town council. So we're excited about it. We've got quite a bit to cover tonight. And then, of course, February will be up and running with all the things that we're going to be doing. So let's do this. Let's call the meeting to order. And Judy, if you would take the roll, please.
Yeah.
No,
You're muted.
Judy, you're on mute.
you were open before.
Muted.
Okay. Yeah, start
Could
again.
be. I should do it again. Neil Butnick,
Here.
Judy Neville, Tom Schulte's absent, Amy Carroll,
Here.
George Blauville,
Here.
Todd Lavieri,
Here.
Chris Labrie,
Here.
Michael Chin is out, Maria Weingarten. Maria's on. She wasn't she coming? I
Yeah.
thought so.
Yeah, she was at the last meeting, so she
Yeah.
must. be here anyway.
Robert Hamill,
Here.
Victor Alvarez, our new member. And our first selectman, Kevin Monahan. So we will need a motion to seat Maria Weingarten and Robert Hamill.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
Neil. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay, great. Thanks,
Uh,
Judy. And welcome to, we all set? Okay, thanks, Judy, and welcome, Victor. Victor Alvarez is joining us as an alternate. Chris Labrie has replaced Bob Spangler, and so Victor will replace Chris. We're excited to have you on board and look forward to working with you this year. Victor.
Thank you very much.
If we could have a motion to approve the minutes from the December meeting? Amy, yep, second.
All second.
Bob, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Done? Okay, thanks. Okay, with that, Kevin, we'll go right over to you with an update, and then we'll turn it over to Ellen for the pension.
Okay, good. Hi, everyone. Happy New Year to everyone. I hope you all saw my op-ed article, which summarized our accomplishments for last year. I would just note a few things currently. Obviously, I just did an outcall on the COVID situation very briefly. Obviously, we had an uptick as we expected with the holiday gatherings at the end for the year end, and had a highest number we've had of cases. And this is primarily young adults, teenagers, and their parents, and mostly in families. But we also had, unfortunately, 2 deaths of people who really were dying already from very serious comorbidities. One in the 90s and one in the early 50s. So, but on the other hand, our community testing at Waveney, which is very convenient for our residents, last week in the 351 people tested, there were only 11, which is the 3.13% positivity rate, which is about half of what the state of Connecticut overall is seeing. So obviously, we're a fortunate community to be socially distancing and for the most part, having rather mild cases when people do get infected. So the vaccination schedule, as I said, is coming out. Medical personnel were first with senior facility residents and first responders. And phase 1B, the state's still debating whether or not teachers are going to be included in 1B, but the over 75-year-olds. Unfortunately, the supply of vaccines is rather low compared to what they'd like to promise we can deliver. So I think the seniors especially are in for a wait for a few. We thought we'd be able to start next week, but we're only getting allocation of 300 locally. That's the situation on the COVID front. And over the New Year's holiday, the CHP equipment arrived at the sewer plant. It's very exciting to see shiny new equipment that's going to make electricity over there with gas. The gas company is going to shortly install the pipeline there. So hopefully, I'm not sure we're going to make our February go live date, but it should soon. Yesterday, our advisory committee on buildings and infrastructure did a deep dive on the whole solar and CHP front, so that as when we get to the proposal for the high school for next year, you'll have a lot more experience with George and Neil and to help make that decision. But again, overall, we're saving a lot of money with both the conversion to gas and the availability of the ability to make electricity with gas. I'm working on, as I've said before, we're about ready to announce the Ponish Ridge Cell Tower up in the northwestern corner of town. I met this morning with Homeland Towers. We are going to bring this to the siting council as a public safety tower with New Canaan as the carrier, which will carry some financial obligation if a carrier doesn't sign on early on at the end of the year. So I'll be bringing further details of that, but I expect we're going to bring a agreement to the Board of Selectmen next week to sign, and then we'll announce that along with other plans for more cell towers. The Police Department Building Committee will have its second meeting this Thursday, and the budget numbers are coming together quite nicely on the town side. I wasn't too happy, and Todd can elaborate if he wants to about the Board of Ed numbers we're hearing. I'm very pleased with what we're seeing on the town side. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised as well. So that's all I have.
Okay.
Thank
you.
I have a quick
Go ahead.
question. Can you hear me?
Yes, Neil.
Just on the vaccine, it seems like the CDC in New York and most of the states around now are going to 65.
Well, the
Right.
CD, it's going to take us, we have 1,500 over 75-year-olds in New Canaan alone. And when they give us 300 doses, I mean, it's going to take a while for the over 75 to get taken care of across the state.
Why do we get the different doses? Yesterday, one of my friends in Stanford called and had the shot today, 24 hours later.
Well, the city of Norwalk is getting 500 doses, as big as that city is. So it seems there's a bit, I think some people are perhaps getting in line as first responders. The first vaccines are going to the medical category and seniors in residential facilities. And no doctor in New Canaan has gotten a vaccine yet to administer. So it's a kind of a slow rollout. And if they bring teachers into the mix with 1B, that'll be almost 1 million people in Connecticut, 1/3 of the population, almost 1/3 of the population will be in the next phase. And the next phase could therefore last 6 or 8 weeks.
Wow.
It's going to be much slower than people perhaps think. And bringing 65-year-old, we have 2,000 65 to 74-year-olds in New Canaan. So
Don't you find them the most intelligent of the couple? Sorry.
I appreciate everybody being on mute, but I will say that Sven did raise his hand and give a thumbs up for that demographic. So
Unfortunately, I just saw numbers a couple hours ago where it's also the largest group that's moving out of town. So
All right. So
okay.
Neil, I'm going to mute you now, Neil, because people are telling me they're getting that feedback for
A
whatever.
lot of clicking. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
any other
that's-
questions?
No other questions. As it relates to the Board of Ed, no comment. I think we just have to see the details. It's too early to have a judgment. Okay, with that, let's turn it over to Ellen. Ellen, I don't know if Rob's with you or if it's just you, but to do the update on the actuarial evaluation.
Okay, great. Can everybody hear me okay? Just want to make
Yes.
sure. Okay, I see some heads nodding, so I'll take that as a good sign. Yep, so Rob Lassard is here as well. So we are going to go through the results of the pension valuation, and then if there is time, we can also cover the OPEB as well, or if you would like to hold off on that, that's fine too. You just let us know. So I think everyone has the presentation that we presented to the retirement committee back in December. So we're going to work off of that. We're not going to go through every page in that report. We're going to kind of touch on the highlights of it, but I have it up on my screen. I can share my screen if that would be helpful. I don't know if you'd like that or if everybody likes to see
Yes,
each
you
other.
do. Ellen, yeah.
Okay.
Just to keep the everyone on the same page, please.
Perfect. Okay, let me do that right now.
And I made you the co-host, so you should be able to do that.
All right, let's see if this works. give me 1 second. Okay, can everybody see that now?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right. So I am going, and as I said, we're not going to go through every page in this presentation, but if you do have questions or would like more detail on anything, absolutely feel free to stop us as we go, and we can provide whatever detail you would like to hear. So I'm going to start here on page 4, the kind of purpose of the evaluation, why we do this every year, and how we come up with the recommended contribution at a very basic level. So that chart you see in the middle of the page, that shows the true cost of a pension plan. The ultimate cost of it is the total value of benefits that you pay out until the very last retiree in this plan passes away and receives that last check. That's really the cost of the plan, plus any expenses you incur as the plan goes on. Your cost is offset by the returns you get on your investments. So, you let your investments work for you and lower your contributions that are required into the plan, because you do make up some of it through investment gains, and less what employees contribute to the plan. So employee contributions are a direct offset to what the town has to contribute. I'm going to jump to the last bullet on this page. So we call it the ADEC, the Actuarially Determined Employer Contribution. It's made up of 2 pieces. So you have the amortization of the unfunded liability, and you have the normal cost. So the normal cost portion of the contribution is attributable to your active employees. So active employees are currently working for the town. They're currently earning another year of service as they work. Their salary is growing, and both of these things ultimately are going to pay them higher benefits when they retire. The more service they have, the higher their pay is, the higher their benefits are when they retire. So you have to have a way to pay for that annual accrual. So that's one piece of the contribution. The second piece of the contribution is what we call the amortization of the unfunded liability. And generally speaking, in pension plans, New Canaan is in a different position because you are so well funded. But usually, especially in the state of Connecticut, where the average funded percent is somewhere in the 70% range, your liability is higher than your assets, usually. And there has to be a way to make those 2 pieces equal, because you have to have the assets to back the benefits that you promised to all of the employees in your plan. So there needs to be a mechanism in your contribution to make those 2 pieces, your assets and your liability, equal to each other. Now, in New Canaan's case, you're actually overfunded. So your assets are higher than your liability. So that mechanism to make those 2 pieces equal is essentially bringing your assets down to where your liability is. And so the way that we do that is through a 15-year amortization of that overfunded amount. So what happens is you have your normal cost piece of the contribution, which is what employees are accruing in the plan in the upcoming year. But then it's actually getting reduced because this amortization piece is a negative number. So overall, your contribution ends up being less than the value of benefits that employees are accruing in the plan. So the mechanism that New Canaan uses to make assets and liability equal to each other is to pay it off over 15 years. So theoretically, if everything happens exactly as it should, 15 years from now, your assets will equal your liability. This amortization is no longer going to be negative because you're not going to be overfunded, and your contribution will just revert to the normal cost. And we'll show you what those numbers actually are a little bit later in the presentation. But I do just want to make that point clear that because the plan is overfunded, you're actually lowering your contribution. The next few pages just kind of go through what happened to the assets over the 2-year period. Just as a refresher, when we develop your contribution, we use an actuarial value as opposed to the straight market value. Basically, we phase in gains and losses in the market over a 5-year period, and we use kind of a smoothed asset value. rather than the straight market value. It serves to smooth out the gains and losses in your contribution as a result of market gains and losses. So I won't go into a lot of detail on that. On the liability side, things happened pretty much as we expected. There were no real big changes in contribution due to any changes in your population. A couple of assumption changes that we are recommending happen this year. The first one is on the inflation assumption. And where this impacts the liabilities is when we look at how we expect a participant's salary to grow from where it is today to where it is when they retire. Because ultimately, the benefit that they receive from the pension plan is going to be based on the salary when they retire, not the salary that they have today. So we have to somehow project where their salaries will be when they retire. And one portion of that projection is inflation. So we previously had been assuming a 2.75% inflation rate per year. We're backing that down to 2.5%. This recommendation is consistent with some projections that the Social Security Administration has they do projections every year, and they have long-term inflation assumptions in their projections, and their assumption right now is 2.4%. They actually just lowered it this year from 2.6. So we're going with 2.5, which is kind of right in the middle of where Social Security is. The other change was on the mortality assumption. The recommendation is that we move to the most recent tables that are available right now. There was a study done back in 2019 that took into account public pension data only. All other tables had always been based on private plan data, and the new tables are based on only public plan data. So they're really specific to public plans. We do recommend that you adopt these new tables. They had a pretty significant impact on the liability. It was showing that the study they did was showing that people were living longer than the previous study had shown. So the end result there was an increase in the contribution as a result of that assumption. This page gets into the valuation results that we presented to you 2 years ago on the right-hand column, and the valuation results that we're presenting to you today in the July 1st, 2020 column. So I'm going to turn it over to Rob here to go through that a little bit.
Thank you, Ellen. Good evening, everybody. The two items that I want to focus the most on here are at the bottom, the funded ratio, and then the ADEC itself, which we've already spoken about. So from 18 to 20, the funded ratio went down 2.4%. Still in very good shape. You're still overfunded. You can see that there are two lines for the ADEC. Since you do a biennial valuation, you will calculate the ADEC for 2 years into the future. So the amount that just got paid for the current fiscal year is the very bottom line in the 2018 column, the 1.543 million. That just got paid. So I think that's all I'd really like to cover on this page, unless there were any questions. We're going to skip over page 11 as well. Okay, so onto page 12. The full town ADEC is calculated as follows. So the first three lines on here represent the normal cost. So the top line is the gross normal cost. The normal cost is going to be paid by either New Canaan or the employee. So the sum of the two is the 2.74 million. The amount that the employees are going to pay is the 0.60 million. And then we also have a third line. There's expenses that get paid out of the trust. So each year we assume a load for what that would be. The next line, as Ellen went into, there's a 15-year amortization, which is typically for unfunded liability. Because of the good spot that you're in, it's actually going to be a negative offset. So it's going to be negative 0.74 million. And then there's an adjustment for interest because of the fact that it gets calculated as of the valuation date, but it actually gets paid in the future. So the bottom line of this is that the two lines in bold are what we're coming up with for what fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23 would be for your ADEC. Are there any questions? Okay, I think we can move on to the next page. So we just wanted to point out that we feel comfortable as the actuary remaining at 6.75, but just as an illustration, we were asked to run it at 2 alternate scenarios that were a little bit lower. So you can see the impact going from 6.75 down to 6.5. I believe you were at 1.7 million under the 6.75 scenario, and it's about a $5 million increase under that. And it's basically linear. So your 6.65, you can see it's a little bit less expensive, but it's obviously quite a difference from the 6.75. The additional tabs that we have here related to pension are all from our municipal survey. I really don't know if you want to go into any detail on this, but it's basically comparisons of funded status, investment return, etc., based on all the municipalities in Connecticut. If there are no questions related to this, I'm going to turn it back over to Ellen.
Okay,
Todd, if you could just hang on that page for a second. So we always want to know what is how is our peer group? And okay. I don't know if anybody has any questions, but.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So what do you, Ellen?
okay, thanks. And just think we have one more peer group comparison slide in here. So this shows the last slide that you saw in the peer groups showed the investment return assumptions that folks down in your area are using. This slide shows the funded percentage of the plans for your peer group. So as you can see, this data is a little bit old. Where the June 30th, 2020 CAFR information just came out, and it's not even yet available for all municipalities yet. So this is based on information from a year ago. But as you can see, New Canaan is pretty well funded. You're in an area of very well-funded plans, but you are even then still one of the top. And the important thing to note also on this slide is, the funded percentage is going to really vary based on the interest rate that you use to value the liability. If a plan is using a lower interest rate, they're going to have a higher liability, which would make their funded status lower. But what we've done on this slide was kind of normalize all of the liabilities to a 7% rate of return, so that you're really looking at apples to apples comparisons here. And you really kind of get a true feel for where you stand compared to others. I think that's everything we had on the pension side. So are there any questions about any of that? Anything related to the ADEC or?
Tucker, can you see if there are any questions? Anybody have their hand up from the board? I can't see the whole.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through. I don't see anybody. If anybody is wanting to talk, raise your
Oh,
hand.
we're very pleased that we're still over 100%, particularly with that date of July 1st of last year, I would say as well. I'm sure it's obviously even better.
Ellen, I have a question. This is Victor. I just wanted to know, is there any benefit to going beyond the 110% funded percentage that we have? Like, as we go farther up, is there any benefit to us?
I mean, it certainly gives you a lot more flexibility in the future in terms of, if we have another historic asset year, like I think it was 2008, where you know, the market kind of tanked. Yeah, a lot of plans were in really rough shape after that. You know, the better funded you are, the better you can withstand things like that. And it gives you, I think, a little bit more flexibility in terms of if you have a year where you say, you know, we just really can't make the full ADEC this year for whatever reason, you would have, you know, it wouldn't hurt your plan like it would a plan that was already in poor shape. And kind of as we were talking about before, by design in the funding method, we've sort of designed it so that over 15 years, your assets are going to equal your liability. So you'll be exactly 100% funded. So you know, if you just follow your funding policy as it currently stands, and if the market returns exactly 6.75% for the next 15 years, which we know is not going to happen, but theoretically speaking here, at the end of the 15 years, you would be 100% funded. You wouldn't be, you know, going above the 110. We're kind of designing it to make you 100% in 15 years. That's what the funding policy is making happen, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have just a quick question. So these, the contribution levels, our ADEC, that is incorporating a more conservative actuarial assumption about actuarial life. Is that the two adjustments you spoke about earlier? Is there, I mean, are we, the differential is that, you know, 6 months, a year, 2 years, is there something? I'm just curious because, you know, obviously our contribution's going up a little bit next year. I'm just wondering how much of that is attributable to more conservative assumptions on longevity.
Yep.
It may be granular, so if it is, that's fine.
No, that's okay. I think, sorry for scrolling. I hope I'm not making anyone dizzy here. We have I can get you the number. I don't have it offhand, but the combined effect. So the inflation assumption lowered the liability and lowered the ADEC because we're assuming that people's salaries won't increase as much through their retirement. So that actually lowered the liability. The mortality assumption, as you just mentioned, increased the liability. The combined effect of those two things was a $1.4 million increase in liability and $70,000 increase in contribution. So that's what happened when we put both of those changes together. If we just isolate the mortality, it was larger than 1.4
Sure.
million.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I don't have the number offhand, but we can get it for you if you're interested.
Thanks.
Okay, unless there are other questions on the pension, do you want to go through the OPEB?
Sure, we can do that. Yep. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry for the scrolling here. Okay. So I'm going to skip this slide. It's the same as it was on the pension side. So this slide looks at what happened to your assets from 7/1/18 to 7/1/2020 on the OPEB side. The important thing to note here is when we develop the contribution on the OPEB plan, we don't use an actuarial value of assets, meaning we don't use that sort of same smoothing method that we use on the pension side. We just use the straight market value on the OPEB side in developing your contribution. One thing I would recommend we look at with the next valuation is perhaps moving to a smoothing method like we do on the pension. I think your assets are getting large enough that that would make sense. I know when you first started the trust, the trust versus the liability wasn't all that sizable, but it is getting to be sizable now, whereas some asset smoothing would make sense. So you can see what happened. I mean, you know, assets from where they were at 2018 to where they are in 2020, they've grown quite significantly. You have made contributions to the plan. You're not paying benefits out of the plan. So really you just have cash flows coming in and nothing coming out. So that's expected that your assets are growing pretty well on the OPEB side. This page just gives a little bit more detail on market returns for 1819 and 1920. We're assuming that they'll return 6.75% each year. So we were just short of those, of that expectation over the past 2 years. On the liability side, the liability was actually lower than we were expecting it to be. If everything had happened, again, exactly as we expected it to happen, the liability would have been higher. The reasons it was lower was because of the removal of the Cadillac tax, which happened back in 2019. If you remember what that was all related to, that was plans that had really rich benefits were going to be taxed on premiums above a certain threshold. And then the IRS decided that they were no longer going to pursue that, and they kind of got rid of that legislation back in 2019. So we took that kind of load for taxes out of the liability. So that brought the liability down. In addition, the medical premiums increased less than we expected to. So every year there's an expectation that medical premiums will increase versus where they were the year before. And the premiums actually did not increase as much as we had anticipated they would, which led again to a lower than expected liability. And we're making the same recommended assumption changes on the OPEB that we did on the pension regarding the new mortality and the trend assumption. So the trend assumption is our expectation of how medical premiums are expected to increase in the future. So we made some slight tweaks to that assumption. And even with these changes, which actually both increased the liability was still $1 million less than we were expecting it to be. So that was some good news there. So that, coupled with the fact that you had, quite some significant increases in your assets, are actually leading to a lower ADEC on the OPEB side for the upcoming fiscal year. So again, same kind of chart that we showed you on the pension side. The items on the bottom, I'll just point to down here. So this was the ADEC for fiscal year 1920 and 2021. This is the ADEC for 21-22 and 22-23. So slightly lower than where you were last valuation. You can see the funded percentage is actually up almost 8%. So you are getting to be up there in terms of funded percentage on the OPEB side. Now, currently, you don't pay benefits out of the trust. The benefits and claims get paid directly from the town. So that is, in a way, considered to be a contribution because you're paying those benefits from the town. Another way to think of it is you could put that money into the trust as a contribution and then pay it out in benefits. You're sort of just cutting out that one step of putting it into the trust and then paying it out. But that offsets your ADEC for the year. So if you look down here, so we're telling you the ADEC is 1.463 million for 21-22. But expected benefit payments are 1.183. So that's money that will come directly from the town. So the difference between those two leads to an ADEC of about $280,000 for 21-22. Kind of a similar setup on the 22-23 contribution. Expected benefit payments are up a bit. And so an additional $178,000 would be expected to satisfy the full ADEC for that year. Any questions on anything here, any of the OPEB numbers? I think the next slide on here just splits it down by town and Board of Ed, a little bit more detail.
Hey, Ellen, do we have comparative numbers for the level of OPEB funding across other towns? I mean, our numbers are just, compared to most places, they're fabulous. I mean, so many people don't have a penny funded for OPEB, so it's really exciting. I was just wondering how our peer towns are. If you, just curious whether, because we have the comparison in terms of the regular pension, how funded we are.
Yep. Yeah, like you said, many plans don't even fund for OPEB benefits, so it's somewhat rare that a plan has a trust and has a trust as sizable as yours is. I don't have the statistics on your peer group offhand. We have them compiled, so I can get them over to you. The only one I happen to know because I looked it up today was Wilton, and I know that they actually do have an OPEB trust. They're over 100% funded, and I know that they pay benefits out of their plan. Beyond that, in terms of your peer group, I don't have the statistics, but I can tell you that New Canaan is in, the top 5-10% of in terms of OPEB funding and funded status.
Okay, thanks.
Other
Ellen,
questions?
can you talk a
Sure.
little bit about whether it would be a benefit for us to pay benefits out of this plan or how we're currently doing it? I've had a couple questions about that.
Sure. So there's, kind of different factors I think that you want to look at in terms of when you do start paying benefits out of the plan directly. One thing I would definitely advise would be to check with your investment advisor about that. Because currently you have cash coming into the plan, you don't have cash going out of the plan. And it's a fairly sizable cash flow out that we're talking about, over $1 million, roughly 8-9% of your total asset value would be coming out every year. So definitely you would want to get input from your investment advisor and whether, having that cash flow out would affect your investment portfolio at all. I think, you would make sure that you have that information before you kind of make any decisions about that. But in terms of, when you start paying benefits out of the trust, there's kind of no real magic threshold that you hit and you start doing it. It's kind of, you look at different factors. So right now, your benefit payments are less than your ADEC. So you're making a contribution to the plan to make up the full ADEC. If we get to a point where your benefit payments are bigger than your ADEC, which, at where your assets currently are and kind of how things are going, we could certainly run some projections and see when we expect that to happen. But I don't think it's going to be too far into the future where your benefit payments are actually larger than your ADEC. At that point, I think you probably would want to take a look at paying benefits out of the trust. That would be sort of a natural point to do it. If you did think you wanted to do it sooner than that, we could look at that. Again, the way that you fund this plan and the funded status of it, I don't think you're in any danger. I don't think there would be any issue with, paying benefits out of the trust. You're not going to run the trust dry or anything like that. So again, I think it's a lot of different factors you want to look at, but certainly talk with your investment advisor about it and just, see if they think a change to your portfolio would be warranted if you were paying over $1 million out of the trust. I think that would be good information to have.
Tucker, any other questions out there?
I only see each quarter here as well.
Hey,
So
Ellen, could I ask you to maybe stop sharing? That way we can see
Sure.
the gallery too.
Yes. Yep.
Might help us. I don't see any other hands up. One question for you while people are thinking about questions. Could you do that? Would you mind running a scenario? I think there's got to be a point when there'd be a threshold where the OPEB is funded. That's up to 68%. Is it 75? Is it 88? I mean, what number does it make sense to have the trust start to share, not cover potentially, but is there a shared approach where the OPEB is not being 100% funded by the town, but not being 100% funded by the fund either? So yeah, it would be just good for us to have a little guidance on that. It's not urgent, just something that for us to think about. We like the way we've got it set up now, but it's probably, you're right, it's probably reaching a threshold.
Sure. Yeah. We can run some projections and see kind of when that crossover point happens. And, give you a better idea of, just how many years we're looking at into the future. Like I said, I don't think it's going to be that far into the future where your ADEC does fall below your benefits. And at that point, you probably do want to start paying them out of the trust.
Other questions? Okay, well, if not, we'll call that one a wrap. Thank you, Rob and Ellen. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, Tiger, over to you. Just to get everybody up to speed, as everyone knows, really when COVID hit, we agreed to tap the brakes on capital spending, and you've done that. And it's a new year, and I think there's new hope that we're going to get kind of back to normal, hopefully some point this year. Wanted to get a sense and an update from you on what's urgent. What have we stopped that we need to do? What's your sense in terms of the work that needs to be done this fiscal year, but also this calendar year as it relates to what we've already approved? And just get your view. I think the board's anxious to hear from a capital point of view. I know we approved the East School roof. Maybe a little update on that would be good, but just get your sense.
Thank you. Unfortunately, the East School roof is not underneath my purview. Apologize.
Well, just from a capital point of view, no, I know. But
from a capital, as far as it goes, we actually did quite well overall. We had some contractors that were quite hungry, and we had some excellent pricing come in. The unfortunate thing is, and I'll say we cut the high school parking lot in half. 375, and I got an excellent number that came in for that. I would have liked to have been able to do all of the high school lot in one shot. So I'm hoping that we can see another excellent number come in this spring and work through that. But we had that number was actually sistered off of a number that we did for the schoolhouse parking lot this year. That was imperative to do since we had gas line installation there in the schoolhouse apartment. The parking lot was well beyond its useful life, so it needed to be done. But we did quite well overall. There were certain projects that we did not go forward with. We didn't go forward with the Playhouse roof. We didn't go forward with reconstruction of the Locust lot. We need some additional engineering work there. And then we had delays on sidewalk installation on Owen-Oak Ridge from basically Heritage Hill all the way to Parade Hill. That was more on the state side on state permitting, and they were obviously much more busier with their own COVID issues going forward. But overall, we were able to hit our marker on paving. We paved 9 roads and then installed a good amount of sidewalk on both Fieldcrest and Village and River Street. We were able to hit our marker on our micro. We were able to micro thin overlay 14 separate roads, Cape Seal 2, Crack Seal 13, and then we did HIP on 2 other roads. We did our first installation of fog seal, which is an installation that you would put on the rejuvenator and a strengthener that you put on at the 5-year mark that we have been looking at for the past, say, 7 years or so. So we did that on one stretch of road as a test case to see. We had been looking at it other municipalities. We wanted to see how it would go here. So that was successful. And then, like I said, Kevin stole my thunder, but the SAC CHP is rolling forward. I've got guys working at the wastewater plant. They were there today, bringing in the CHP units there, and then stringing the gas lines. The main will come in hopefully within the next month, and then we'll see CHP at the wastewater plant. And then we'll convert our boilers over after the winter. We don't really want to do that midwinter for obvious reasons. But overall it was good. And West Road Bridge is starting. That was delayed more due to utility relocation than COVID itself. I guess you could say that the utility relocation was delayed because of COVID and because of Isaias. But that started just the other day. That'll be a 6-month run. And we'll have a new bridge there. The only thing that of note, I guess, I guess the best thing that we did was the refurbishing of the Bristol Sanctuary, or phase 1 of the Bristol Sanctuary. So the trail section is in. We had an excellent price from the contractor, so we were able to save money on the trail repair. And we looked at doing a portion of some additional work there, which was the pond dredging, and we sistered the 2 projects together, got an excellent price from the contractor, and then did it together, which was much more cost effective and beneficial as far as timing goes. So we were able to accomplish that as well. We do have some projects that are in the works, so to speak. At the Carriage Barn Powerhouse, we have some work that's slated there. And again, I guess my biggest one is working on the Playhouse roof and getting that done. And then the Gorse Pavilion roof as well, getting all that situated.
Hey, Tiger.
Yeah.
Since you got such great pricing for the repaving at the high school, were you able to, did you similarly get good pricing in terms of your paving? Were you able to pave more for the same amount than you had anticipated?
Yes. What we did, the selectmen allowed us to actually carry the contract off from our first bid into working on redoing the Talmadge Hill parking lot, and then, Fieldcrest and Village, those roads. So we were able to carry the pricing forward into that work and save a good amount of money going forward with that. And then when we bid the schoolhouse lot, I think that set the marker for parking lots for the high school. It did set the marker for the parking lots of the high school, and the numbers were almost identical. Different contractor, but almost identical numbers into the high school. And we expanded that work to try to maximize the amount that we could spend. Out of the 375, I think we spent 350.
So like what percent, was it like a 10% discount to what you anticipated, or, sorry, I'll go on mute.
We typically get, if we come out early in the season, we typically see about a 10% savings versus what our analysis has shown it, versus coming in a little bit later, say an April bid or a late season bid. Sometimes we'll hit the market on a late season bid, say September, for people to look for a close, something to close with. And instead of doing that this year, what we did was we went to the contractor who gave us the early season bid and asked him to carry that forward, and he was willing to do that. I actually, the one I mentioned Bristow, but probably our biggest achievement was the road from the high school to Waveney Park, the access road there. And the contractor is going to start working on the parking lot in that area if the weather holds for us, which we're hoping. But that access road proved highly beneficial for the high school itself as far as traffic control and mitigation of traffic issues. And I think it's a welcome addition. Now you can kind of access Waveney from either Farm Road or South Avenue and kind of work your way around instead of being dead-ended as you come in from the high school and have to turn back around and drive all the way around, come back to the other side exactly where you were. To begin with, we have now a nice little access road connecting the two together. I think that was probably one of our best things we had done all year. And it looks like it belongs there, and it looks like it's been there for forever, which is what we asked at the time. I don't know if that helps you, Todd, or if that.
Yeah, well, it's really for the board. Questions, and anybody on the board have any questions? Yeah, go ahead, Maria.
Yeah, just as a comment, I will say that road has made such a significant difference in dropping off, especially under COVID and everything. It's been really helpful to have that drive to sort of displace the traffic in another direction. It's been great. So
yeah, it helped with the social distancing, and it helped with the traffic because they can then come in and then you drop your child, you drop your high schooler, and then you head off somewhat into the sunset, so to speak. So I think it's highly beneficial. I think it's worked out very well.
Hey, can I ask, have there been any issues? Because when you get onto that Waveney Road, it's really narrow and windy, and and I know just coming from the Y, that time you got to kind of pay attention to traffic pads. We have everything okay with that? No issues with any?
We haven't had any issues. I haven't had any complaints other than one individual. We'd had one accident, and that was a high school teacher cutting the corner too sharply and hitting the Waveney wall off of South Avenue. That was it. But that was a teacher coming in at early morning, trying to utilize the road itself. And I think that, you know, the car queued up, just they kind of didn't judge
No,
that.
no, that's good because it's a tight road with big trees and, you know, a lot of drivers. So that's good. That's not an issue.
I think Bob and then George.
Quick question on the West Road Bridge. That's a big ticket, and I know we went through that, but just how much of that is the state paying?
It's it's the federal government. It's a federal program administered through the state. 80% funding from the federal government, 20% from the town, administered through the state. So out of the $2 million, 1.6 will be federal dollars, and the 400,000 will be the town.
And then that was delayed, so that was in our budget last.
We had a contract out with the contractor. Where we were going to start in June, and part of that, the first part of that is actually utility relocation. Contractor has to coordinate with the utilities, and then we had Isaias, we had other issues, COVID issues, things of that nature, and it pushed us all the way into November. At that point, we said we don't want to start a project in November. Contractor came to us and asked if he could start in January, and he would take in and absorb all the costs for cold weather work, concreting, things of that nature. And he would not ask for a winter shutdown period for that time. So the time would start ticking right when he began. So on the 11th, yesterday, time started ticking. So 6 months from there is June. He felt he could add additional forces to the work and actually hopefully finish a little bit earlier, whereby if not, we would have been delayed to a June start, and then he would have been pushing into Thanksgiving to finish. I didn't want to be pushing into Thanksgiving to try to finish a bridge. I'd like to be coming through it, and without any, the town has no issue of a claim coming forward for delay from weather. It took me longer, it cost me more money for this. That was all written in his proposal, that he would absorb all those additional costs just for the benefit of being able to work early. Because then from his point of view, right, he frees up his crews come April, right? And he's ready to attack other projects. So it's beneficial to him too. So
great, a win-win. Thank you.
Long and the short of it is 80-20.
Great.
George?
Yeah, so Tiger, no discussion of capital expenditures in Buchanan is ever complete without asking, so how are we doing on Waveney House?
Quite well. As a matter of fact, the contractor just began, we'll call it phase 3. So phase 3 is now phase 1. So he's starting with his material placement, and he'll begin cutting some of the doors, cutting some of the entryways. He'll work on the back loge first, that area. Then he plans to do the fire escape and then work his way out the western entranceway, grade that out, and place pavers and things of that nature there. He's looking at being done in June, early June. And we're kind of excited about that, to have that done, especially now. And hopefully by that time, maybe things will start to release, and we can then utilize the area again, utilize the house for other functions.
Any other questions? I've got one quick one. I mentioned D School. I know we sort of work those projects with the Board of Ed, of course. It's all a town project. Did the solar get done there?
Solar was being installed, yeah. I'd have to ask Dan if it was finished. They were late getting started on that, as far as the solar install goes. The rest of the solar projects that we have all been commissioned, and Mark Robbins gave us a nice synopsis as to what our savings are so far to date on that, and what proposed savings we might have moving forward.
You know, it'd be great when we do your budget in February, maybe a little bit on that would be helpful. What have been the savings? How did they go? Lessons learned and what's left, kind of thing. It'd be just a good update. It's been such a nice multi-year project. It's been successful, largely. be good. Okay.
Right. We will definitely do that for you. We can give you some lessons learned and what we feel would be best moving forward.
Okay.
Then areas that we'd like to address. We are looking at certain areas to try to bring gas into, and then whether or not we'll be able to convert over those areas, and then possibly, you know, some additional CHP and some solar initiatives.
Other questions for Tiger? I just want to make sure we had a touch point because we'd put a few things off and hit the brakes and hadn't had an update in a while, so. Judy, go ahead, you're on mute. You're still on mute, Judy.
Judy.
Yeah, just a sec. There,
you-
Tiger. How many more projects do we qualify for, and the length of commitment on the federal government on the 80/20? Because we've really moved as much as we can in 15 years. What's the expiration, if any, coming?
We are pretty much, you know, as you mentioned, we're pretty much at the end of that. It really starts to get down to size of structure and its condition, and we've worked our way pretty
Yeah,
well
yeah.
out of that. We have one bridge left, the Nursery Road Bridge, that
Okay.
is possible for 80/20 funding. The rest we'll be looking at is 50/50. So the next bridge that we're doing, the bridge on Ponus Ridge over Collins Pond, is a 50/50 split. But the benefit there is that the state takes over the design. So the $250,000, $300,000 design fee that we would normally have to absorb, they take over. So there's a little bit of a larger savings there. And then after
Okay.
that, the majority of our bridges are taken care of, and then it gets into preservation work, so to speak, so maintenance work. And that is either a 50/50 split, or there's basically a percentage that they'll give towards the town based upon the type of work that you're looking to do.
Kevin,
Is
did you have a
that-
question? Or?
Is that likely to continue, or we
That
don't
program-
know?
That program will continue, yes. It's just a question of, we will most likely not have any bridges that are eligible for it. Like I said, the Nursery Road Bridge is the only one, but currently it's has a satisfactory rating, so there's no look towards, I have it in our out year plan, and it sits in the out year plan waiting to be moved forward.
What's the preservation and maintenance? How many items do we have
Very
in
few.
the only really? How many left?
Yeah, very few. We have they come through and do an analysis every other year, and we have some that Joe Zagorinsky is looking through right now, and our plan is to come forward and say we have X amount of dollars of preservation work that we need to do, and we have savings in our previous bridges that we could then utilize over. So we have bonding room that was already that we hadn't utilized for the original 7 bridges that we did. And the thought is that we could possibly use that money for that. But he's going through the analysis now to see some of the work we can do in-house. Some of it we've tackled with other projects, say crack sealing a deck of a bridge. We'll crack seal underneath our other programs. And then some actually have to be just bridge related itself. So guide rail replacement, we take under guide rail, but other bridge
Right.
replacement will do underneath that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Kevin, did you have a question or you wanted to?
If when Tiger's done, Diane wants you to go back and take a vote on your ADEC.
Yeah, no, I know. We'll do that when Tiger's done. Yep. Okay, any other questions for Tiger? Okay, well, Tiger, thanks. Appreciate that
Thank you
update.
very much.
And then, yeah, we'll have a great discussion next month.
Yeah, we'll look forward to that.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, we're gonna move over to London Cash Management and a couple things there. But before we do need to take an actual vote on the actual valuation reports themselves and approve them. So can I have a motion to approve those valuation reports? Neil, second? George, thank you. All in favor of approval? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? None, okay. Okay, Tucker, you good? Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so just moving on to item 6, cash management and banking. So I had asked, if you may all recall back in in the spring, we wanted to make sure we had an understanding of where there might be contingency funds, unused balances, in departments where there might be some money that had been accrued over a period of time. And Linda's been working on that, and he'll have a report for us probably in the, I'm not sure, you could tell us, Linda, but maybe February, March timeframe. But we do want to make sure we understand what those accounts might be. And then we need to make some decisions about, do we need them at all? Are they, we may need them, but are they overfunded, and so forth and so on. So that'll be a project that we will have around cash management and those funds and departments in the budget season. Secondly, just to introduce the topic, there's quite a bit of banking activity, as you can imagine, the amount of cash and assets that the town's managing at any one time. And so Linda's embarked on a program and a project to do an RFP to get some better understanding of banking services and better fees and better returns and so forth, and lots of pluses and minuses. So with that, Linda, I'll turn it over to you on both topics.
Can I ask you a quick question before Linda jumps into this?
Sure, but Linda, you may be on mute. I don't know if you're.
I made him co-host. He looks like.
Got 1 second, Amy. Let's just make sure we got Linda's. His computer may be froze too. There you go.
You're muted, Linda. No, you're not. He can't hear you though. Nope. But it says that you're not muted.
Amy, do you need Linda for the question, or?
Yeah, I guess this is a question. I'm just trying to understand this from back a couple years. Remember a couple years ago, we ended up for the town treasurer putting a salary in at $20,000 a year. And I thought that had a lot to do with the cash management side of it.
Involved. He's involved in this. Linda's reporting on it. Oh, 100%. He's actually, I think, managing the RFP for the banks. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Actually, I should have said that. Thanks, Amy.
I think Linda might have logged off to log back in. Let's just see what happens here. Oh, here he comes. There we.
Yeah, Andrew Brooks is who you're thinking of, and he's been right in the middle of this.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
There we go. Thanks, Linda.
Okay.
Yep.
I could hear you guys. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen.
And Linda, I don't know if you heard Amy's question, but she was asking if Andrew Brooks and the as a treasurer was involved, and I said he was working with you on the banking project. But
yes, we have we do have a group, a team that's been kind of putting this together. But most of the analytical work and the reports that we've been sharing have been done by either myself and Josh, our analyst in-house, and Joanne, who does the monthly bank reconciliations.
Yeah, and the reason I asked that is it's one of the few positions. It used to be, I think, almost pretty much volunteer, and we ended up putting a $20,000 salary on because it was represented that it was a lot of work. So I just wanted to make sure that, in fact, work is being distributed, properly, and something that should be held as maybe it's in the treasurer's department, it should be done there as opposed to on you. And you guys figured that I just wanted, because when we talked about the cash management, I thought that was the big point of, putting someone in a salaried position for that, to handle that part of it. So.
Is my screen shared?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, so quickly, just talking about the banking RFP process. We last did an RFP for banking services in 2012. At that time, our primary bank was Wachovia, and based on that process in 2012, we transitioned to Webster. And so we've been with Webster since 2012. And so we thought that this would be a good time. We're almost going on 10 years. Best practice is to review this at least every 5. And so we embarked on this process of seeing who can provide these services, what are some fees that are being charged out there, and are we really getting the best value for our investments and for our banking services. And we do have quite a chunk of money that's out there. So what I did, I put together this cash and investment balances just to kind of provide some context to the volume of work that that's involved in this RFP. So the town's bank balance is the first number at the top. That's our primary checking account, and this is the fund. These are the funds that are currently with Webster. Now, obviously, they're cyclical. They tend to fluctuate based on our tax receipts. So we get a big chunk when the taxes are due, and we kind of spend it down. But on average, you know, we're at about $60 million or so in our primary banking account. And so that is the service that we're looking at seeing who can provide that service. Now, obviously, a lot has changed in this field in the past 10 years. So some of the things we're looking at are, you know, the bank's reporting capabilities, the length of time it takes them to provide us bank statements so we can reconcile them timely. We feel that the timing that we're getting on this now could be improved, especially with online banking. You know, most times you can just open the account and your statement is right there. And so those are the types of things that we're looking at to increase efficiencies and so forth. Also, there are services that are provided by banks. Right now, our arrangement with Webster, we don't necessarily get the equivalent of cash back for our funds that we have invested. They use a point system, so we get points equivalent to what other banks would provide in cash. And therefore, basically, we can apply those points to offset services that they would otherwise provide. And so we feel that looking at the number of points that we have just with Webster and the services that we're redeeming for those points, we're leaving a lot of points on the table. And the town would be better served if we would have, for example, cash. And any cash that we don't use is just cash that goes towards the town. So those are the types of things that we'd be looking in this banking RFP. And so this chart I just created this just to kind of show what we're doing there. The other element of this is, in addition to looking at the banking RFP, we're also looking at where do we park our money for short-term investments. These are things like money market that are fairly liquid that we can park for 3 to 6 months and then withdraw those. Currently, Webster does have a money market account, which is where we park the money as a subset of those balances within Webster. And so one of the things we're also looking as part of this RFP is what are other institutions or other vehicles that we can park these funds on a short-term basis to kind of remain our liquidity so that we're able to access those. And of course, we are guided by, you know, there's state laws in terms of what you could do with your investments. Our policy follows the SLY principle. You know, we're looking at security first, top and foremost in that order. We're looking at liquidity, being able to access the funds when we need them, and then we are looking at yield. But that is the priority order: security, liquidity, and yield. In that order. So that's the process we're embarking on. We do have a team, like I said, myself, Joanne, our controller, our tax collector, Roseanne is on that. Andrew serves on that committee. We have Joshua, our financial analyst, and Tucker is also part of this group. And therefore, we're finalizing the draft RFP right now. I believe we're going to be sending it out in the next week or so. We're going to publish it in the paper. We're going to put it on our website, and we also have a short list of financial institutions that we'll send it out to. So that's just an update on where we are with that. And then as part of the cash management, as Todd made reference to, we will be also reviewing as part of the budget process. There are some funds, non-general funds, that have balances available, and so we're reviewing those to see if any of those funds can be transferred out of those funds and either be moved to the general fund or pay for capital, reduce the amount of bonding that we would otherwise do. I'd be happy to answer any questions related to cash management if you have any.
I had a question, Bob.
Go ahead,
Hamel.
Bob. Yep.
So we've got $60 million, you say, on average, basically Webster credit risk. Is that right? I mean, that's a big exposure to one institution. I haven't analyzed Webster Bank. I assume we have, but it's a stunningly large number to me.
It is, and that's one of the things that we're also, as part of our RFP, we're also going to be looking at that, at the ratings of institutions. It's going to be one of the review criteria. I think, and Andrew was part of this discussion as well, is how much do the banks have to collateralize on our behalf? There is a state statute that says they technically only have to collateralize, I believe it's 10%. And so we don't have 100% of those funds currently collateralized. And so we're going back and forth and see if that amount can be increased, or if we could move those funds around so that we maintain the maximum collateralization of these liquid funds.
And that, so in that, you broke down uninsured, uncollateralized, and then collateralized by bank's trust. I'm not sure I understand what collateralized by the trust is, but so we're, and just to also clarify, so we're earning no interest on any of this. I know rates are near zero, but
Still a lot.
you know,
We're earning some because some of this is within money markets, but no, we're missing out on opportunity for interest, and that's why we're looking as a component of this. I mentioned parking some of these funds in something that's interest bearing, but also provides us the liquidity that we need for day to day, just to kind of keep up with the town's burn rate. But there's definitely more efficient ways of storing these funds and earning some interest on.
because we have you've got a separate line item, 31,300,000 in money markets. So that's distinct. So we're still sitting at Q4 with 60,900,000 non-interest bearing. You say we're earning points, but seems like an opportunity, even at 0.5%, it's $300,000.
So that's one of the things, and we have been approached by financial institutions who have given us those offers, and so we wanted to go through this process so that we could see what else is out there in addition, to the one or two banks that have been knocking out our doors.
Yeah, I would think we'd want to spread our credit risk too. I mean, we're in uncertain times, so that's just my sense.
I agree.
Good input. George, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, I did. So, Linda, we have $118 million in equity exposure in mutual funds?
Well, that's the Vanguard.
That's the pension. Is it the pension?
Oh, it shouldn't be.
Well,
the
it's a
pension. The
combination,
pension's in
yes.
a separate trust. The pension's not part of the town anymore. So what is that 118 million, Belinda?
I can drill down and follow up on that, what exactly these funds are, but yes, and this was as a quarter. We report these in the CAFR. I can look at because some of these is seasonal fluctuations, but I can get you the specifics of where these funds are.
No, yeah, it's.
Or sure.
Yeah, it wasn't meant as a gotcha question. It was meant. As,
No, not at all.
Yeah. But that's 118 million of the town's money that's invested in equity funds. And I'm sure it's okay because the state has extensive definition and requirements as to what municipalities can take their excess cash and put in. But that just
Let's make
seems.
sure we understand what it is.
Yeah.
It's got to be the pension between that.
Yeah, it must be a consolidation.
Yeah, because the grand total is $360 million. So that's got to include everything.
Yeah,
it's everything.
It has to be.
But I will drill down and let you know exactly what.
Right, because I don't
the
think.
composition of
But this chart's a little misleading if we're talking about cash management.
Yeah.
And I would think the money market funds would be within some of that would be within the pension too. There's a cash allocation in the pension. I don't know, just.
There is, but I don't think the pension assets are reported as part of the town's general equity balances.
Right, but we just have this chart that he pulled together, which is cash and investment balances. It's probably coming from various sources. I don't know. Just
correct.
Well, I think that would be good to know, Linda.
So Linda, is your committee looking at the items that are on the lower part of this chart or just on the top part of the chart?
No, right now the committee is only focused on this top part.
Okay.
And just on the, in the money market, right? Because isn't that where the tax receipts where's the tax income coming in? Where's that line item?
The tax receipts are primarily up here.
They're up there. Okay. So is that at the beginning of the quarter or the end? Q1 21, is that September or is that?
This would be the end of the quarter,
Okay.
point in time, right?
Okay. So that's the end of September. Good.
The last day of the quarter.
Okay. Judy?
Linda, who's on your committee?
On the banking RFP committee, myself, our controller, tax collector, treasurer, and Tucker for reviewing the banking RFP.
Have you thought about adding somebody from the audit committee?
We could.
In the past, I think we broadened that a little bit. This is more than I have seen before. I just wonder if maybe it needs a sort of a third or fourth look.
No, we could. We looked at the team that reviewed the 2012 RFP was staff, basically mirrored the people that were in these roles. But we could definitely add
Before
a member of the
that, we had a broader group. Yeah.
Linda, just on that, how many banks will get the RFP? And I thought you had a Board of Finance volunteer on that team.
We do not have a Board of Finance member on this team.
Maybe we should. Yeah.
But we would welcome one.
I think you hurt my feelings. I volunteered on that call.
Bob Hamill, volunteering you, Bob.
You're in.
Bob, you'd be great if you wouldn't mind. I mean, it would be
Yeah.
really.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Yeah, all
Absolutely.
for it.
All
I'm
right.
down
thank you.
south, but send it all virtual. Yep.
Yep, that's fine.
Thank you.
Bob, I thought your comment about that's a lot of risk in one place and just, I don't know if it makes sense to do it in two places versus
Oh,
one. I just thought that was.
I almost wouldn't be able to sleep if I'd known that. I'm stunned. I'm hoping that maybe it's not what it appears because we've got all kinds of commingled assets.
Well, that's why we're having this discussion. It's gotten to be a point where it's really got to get a bright light
It's a
on.
lot.
Hopefully Webster's not big in New York City real estate.
And how many banks will get the RFP, did you say?
I don't know yet because we're going to post it on the website. I believe on the list that we had from last time, we have like 5 or 6.
Yeah, we want at least that.
But we hope to broaden that as much as possible.
Good.
It seems to me that we looked at this maybe a couple of years ago when the treasurer made an initiative about looking at the banks. At the time, we had a couple of local banks, maybe one of the national banks, a local bank, and then it seems to me that as a result of that work, it got concentrated in this one bank.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Isn't that kind of what happened? And then that led to the discussion of the treasurer's role being much more important. And then we had this decision on funding the stipends for it. And so it probably predates you, Linda, I would think.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah, this needs close scrutiny because this is a lot of serious money here.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Well, Bob, I appreciate you being volunteered by Amy.
No problem.
Hi, Bob.
I had a sister, Amy. She volunteered.
Linda's on this. I just want everybody to know, it's Linda that's really pushed this and asked for it, and he's right on. I don't want to lose sight of the other point, which is the funds that might be in the accounts too. So great job, Linda. Anything else you want to cover on this item?
No, nothing else on this.
So when will we get another update? You can have something for us in next month, I hope, and some point during the month.
I can have something next month because I think based on our current timeline, we hope to have the RFP out before the end of the month. And so by the time we meet next month, we will have sent the RFP out. I'm not sure if they're not due back until sometime in March, but we'll know at that point, how many banks got it, how many have received it, and so forth.
Can I ask you, let's do this, Tucker. Let's just add cash management as an agenda item for at some point in February. It doesn't have to be exactly our regular meeting. It could be one of our other budget meetings and we just tack this item on the end. But I'd like to, you guide us a little bit, Linda, on what meeting makes sense for us and have an update in February. And then we'll have another one in
February.
March and another one in April. Let's have one every month just as we go through this process to keep everybody in sync.
Okay, we'll do.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Okay. If there not any other questions, again, you could, Tucker, you could see the gallery better than I.
Yeah.
We're good.
Neil has a question.
Oh, go ahead, Neil. Let me guess. Neil's
I
on
think
mute.
you muted him, Tucker, didn't you?
I didn't mute him. I mean, I did earlier, but Neil, you gotta mute yourself.
We're so
Yeah.
bad here.
Neil, you're still muted, Neil. You're still muted, Neil.
Okay.
There you go.
I'm sorry. I just think that you should also look for ways to sweeten the pot for the banks, because these are small balances, and if we divide them again to spread them out over different credits, or even be smaller balance, and it seems like the banks are going to look for other parts in relationships, other ways they can have relationships with us than just cash balances, because this isn't going to send anybody to the bank.
Yeah.
Well, they get 60 million of float to loan out. I mean, that's a nice it's a nice asset for them. They're lending money to plenty of folks. It's their business model. They don't have to pay for those deposits. So.
They're not very optimistic on that business model. But I'm just saying, if there's a way to sweeten the pot, like look to add other banking relationships that we might activity that we might do. It might not just be the cash balances, maybe other things that we can add that we don't know we have that they find valuable. Just something to think about.
Yeah, I mean, we keep our pension with Vanguard, and they have cash management too, I think. I mean, it's all in U.S. Treasuries, et cetera.
And
it's good to support the local bank, but
Right.
Yeah.
And we have some with Janie Montgomery. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a thought.
Thanks, Neil. Okay, Linda, let's go over to financial update and give us a sense as to how we are standing here year to date.
Sure. I have two items on this to discuss, just the year-to-date update, and then I also want to give you an update on some refunding opportunities that we'll be taking to the town council next week. So year-to-date revenues, and Todd, you caught this. It's showing we were at 88 million last year. This time, right now, we're 82.6. It shows a $5 million swing in collection, but that's really a timing. We're actually at 89. We did have a $5 to almost $6 million inflow in January. That's not captured here, and therefore comparing apples to apples, we're at about where we were, a little bit ahead of where we were last year. Good. In terms of tax collection. So that's the primary driver of that variance. So if that's the anomaly here, but otherwise year to date, we are where we would kind of anticipate to be. We are low as we anticipated on our parking revenues and permits. We're about 400,000, actually almost $500,000 where we would have been last year, largely driven by, we haven't had any parking permits revenue so far this year. We haven't had minimal parking meter revenue. We've just reopened that up again, and very little parking ticket revenues, which were the three main drivers of that parking revenue. And so those are the reasons why that number is below. You will notice that conveyance fees are trending ahead. We are at $1.3 million now, compared to a little over 500,000 last year. So that's trending well, and that's making up for the differences in those other revenues. So year to date, we are where we anticipated we would somewhat be in terms of revenues. I think our higher tax collection rate is also factoring in why we're doing well with tax collections and back tax collections as well.
So just to be clear, on the revenues, you're saying we've actually received about 93 million, not 86.7.
Not 82.6. This 82.6 number as of January was 89 million.
I'm
Right.
on the total. Down
Oh, you're
below
on the
it says
total.
80 Yeah,
Yes.
the total says 86.7, and you're saying it's closer to 93, I think, is what I heard.
Closer to, yes, 93, 92, somewhere around there.
So it's right on last year. Okay, that's good.
It's right on last year.
All right, that's helpful.
And then on the expenditure side, year to date, following usual spending trends, we're at about 44% of total budgeted expenditures halfway through the year. This is as of December, which is consistent with where we would be. This does already include the $1.5 million special appropriation for the Board of Ed. So that's already factored in. I think we will, as we close the year, knock on wood, we should end the year spending below budget, and hopefully our revenues should come in a little above or close to what's budgeted. And we had budgeted for, I believe this year we had budgeted for a $4.5 million fund balance drawdown when the budget was approved. I don't anticipate that happening. We'd be closer to worst case scenario, maybe $1 million, $1.5 million drawdown, and therefore we should end the year much better than what we had budgeted, consistent with history.
Good. Very good.
And then the final thing I wanted to talk about here, we are constantly reviewing our opportunities for refunding existing bonds. There's 2 bonds out there, taxable and non-taxable bonds. This is an analysis that was done by Piper Jaffray. It's about 3 to 4 weeks old, and so we'll know what the exact numbers are when we go to the market, but this does provide us some sense of go or no-go decision-making point. We have about $35 million of outstanding bonds that we look to refund. Total savings, about 1.7, and here's the difference between the current debt service and what the projected debt service would be. I've highlighted the 2 most immediate debt service payments. We have a June 21 and a June 30 that would potentially have an impact on this upcoming budget, depending on when we end up going out for bond. If you add these 2 up, they're almost 390,000, and this will provide immediate relief to our current debt service. So, for example, here we're looking at potentially a June 30, 2021 payment principal and interest reduction of 290,000, which goes directly to impact the year-to-date budget that I just referenced, compared to budget. And so depending on when we go out to bond, this could either be realized this fiscal year, or it could be realized in the next fiscal year. So what we'll do, like we did last year, you'll recall that before we approved the budget, we did revise that debt service number, principal and interest, just before adoption to take into account any savings on refunding. And so that's something that we look to benefit from, depending on how the market favors us when we go out. Our goal is to go out into the market end of February, mid-March. But the first step is going to the town council for them to approve the bond resolution, which is the first step allowing us to go into the market. The way we plan to do this one is we will do a competitive bid for underwriter. And then once we have selected the underwriter, we will do a negotiated sale. And the reason we're proposing that is because there's some taxable bonds there's some non-taxable bonds that we're refunding as taxable bonds just because it makes sense and because of the interest rates. And therefore, because it's not taxable to taxable, our financial advisor is recommending a negotiated sale, but we will do a competitive bid for the underwriter. The last bonds we issued were with Piper Jaffray, and that was the process we did then as well. We competitively selected the underwriter and then did a negotiated sale.
So Linda, they're proposing modifying the debt service payable by 6/30/21 on the refunding to front load the debt service, savings, to front load the savings, right? Okay, as opposed to doing dollar to dollar, yeah, okay. And what, do you know what, interest rate this, was this 20-year amortization was run at?
I should have printed that sheet. I don't.
Okay.
But I can get that to you.
That's okay.
So this provides us a net present value savings of about 5.5%. Typically, we look anything over 3.5 is considered good. So
That's good.
5.5 is really good, and hopefully the market won't have changed as much by the time we go out.
Cool.
And that's all I have by way of a financial update.
Any question? Well, we got a couple of line item transfers, right? You want to go through?
Correct.
Any questions, other questions for Linda? You may want, oh, you're going to share them. Okay, good. Again, Tucker, if you can see the.
I can. I just wanted to, Linda, before we move on.
Sure.
We did want to ask everybody if they wanted hard copies of the budget this year, or we're going to be doing it electronically. We're asking each board how they want to handle that. The Board of Selectmen has decided to go green, and they're doing it all electronically, printing what they need. Any thoughts?
Why don't have people get back to you, Tucker?
Okay.
I'll take electronic.
Yeah, I think electronic's probably fine. We can print out what we need, but let's if anybody has an objection to that, why don't you get back to Tucker?
Yeah, if anybody wants it in hard copy, let me know, or I'll assume everyone's electronic.
Good. Okay. Any other questions?
I have
for Linda on
sorry.
either the cash management or financial update. Look, that's a great mid-year update. Linda, I don't know that we would have thought we'd be there 7 or 8 months ago. So that's terrific. I mean, the revenues are great. The spending's under control, which is nice. And if we don't have to use that money from the general fund, which would be terrific, that continues to help us keep things in control. So great. Okay.
So we have a couple of line item transfers. The first batch is just for your review, and so these transfers have already been completed, and so we just bring them to you. These are just transfers between departments, moving money between line items. The second group is a transfer from contingency that does require your approval. You'll recall that each year when we do the budget, when we did the budget this year, the town had not ratified the contract with the Public Works Union, and therefore that amount was budgeted in contingency. The non-union employees, those funds were budgeted in contingency as well. And now that we've ratified the unions, and so we're basically transferring these funds out of contingencies into those respective departmental salaries line. But any transfers out of contingency requires your approval. And so that's, and I've itemized here the departments and the amounts that are moving from contingency into the respective budgets.
Okay, so you need a motion on these. Any discussion on these items? Any questions before we have a motion? Speak up if you have any questions. Tucker, anybody?
I don't see anybody.
Okay. Pretty straightforward. Okay, then I need a motion to approve line item transfers.
Can't see everybody, so if someone could speak up. Amy? Okay.
Amy,
Second.
that was Bob?
Yep.
Okay, second, Bob. Okay, all in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay, so moved. Okay, that was our last item on the agenda.
Yep, just motion to adjourn, I guess.
Okay, with that, we'll have a motion to adjourn. Is that Anil? Go ahead. Yep, second. Chris, thank you. All in favor? Aye? Opposed? Okay, so moved. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Tiger.
Thank you.